So this is part 2 of lesson 5. We've been customizing some of the views along with the controller and model for our book. Pardon me. One of the other things we want to look at now is how do we kind of change some of the aesthetics of this stuff? So how do we personalize the site and make it our own? So there's a number of tools we can use. First one I'm going to use, and I will actually put some links up on D2L for you as well, is I want to change the font. So I'm going to use a Google font. So go to Google Fonts. I'm going to find a font that I think kind of works well, maybe something kind of classic for our bookstore. Look until I find something I like. Yeah, this one's not bad. Well, maybe go with this bitter font. So I'll click on it and scroll down to the regular weight. I'll click select this style. And it gives me a few CSS links to put in our header. So I'm going to copy that, and I will go to the layout file, and up at the top above Bootstrap, so I'm linking to my Google font. And then the next step, it said, is to go to our style sheet and change the default font family. So I'll copy that. I've already got my style sheet open, and in the body, you can just add this to the body tag, that our font family will be this bitter font. You don't have to use this one. You can use any font you want. So now when I go back to the site, now we've got this kind of a little more classic font style. Another thing I can add, actually, let me just go. I will put a bunch of resources here. I had them on Blackboard for my other class. I neglected to throw them in, but I will do that right now. Throw them up on D2L so you have them as you're watching the video. So here are some design tools for customization. So I've used Google Font. The next tool I want to use is the material palette. So material design, these are Google's design guidelines. So I want to find maybe a couple of classic colors for our bookstore. So I'm going to pick on click 2. Maybe I'll do something like, well, indigo for a bookstore. I've already got an indigo books, so I won't pick that. Maybe I'll pick like a brown. And something like our cyan. So it'll give us this kind of color palette. So I can use these colors to style our site. So the first thing I'm going to do is use this blue, this accent color, for all of our links and buttons. So if I just click on it, it copies the hex value to my clipboard. So I'm going to change the blue as well as the blue we're using here. So in my style sheet, I'm going to change the A tag. I'll change the color to use our blue. I'm also going to change it as the background color of our BTN primary class. So we're going to get this little more of a teal color. Then I want to make our header, I want it to be this brown color. I'm going to click on the primary color here. And down in my style sheet, I'm going to overwrite the bootstrap navbar dark class. I'm going to paste it in here. So we're going to use this dark brown, and then I'm going to go to the layout file and make a few changes here to the navigation. Notice the default class here is navbar light. I'm going to change that to navbar dark, and I'm going to remove this BG white that makes our navbar white background. So now our navbar should be brown, which it is, which is good, but I've also got to toggle the class on these links because they're set to text dark. So down here on lines 26 for our home link and line 29 for our categories link, I'm going to change those to text light. So the font becomes white. I get this gray rollover effect, which is fine. And then my register and login links, those are in our login partial. We're also going to need to toggle the class there from text light to text dark. So under views and shared, I've got login partial. So I'm going to toggle those text dark links. So there's two links up here. There's also separate links down here for register and login. So I'm going to toggle all four of them from text light to from text dark to text light. We can also style our table. So if I go to Bootstrap, look at the docs for a second. So we've got some different table classes. Here's our general table. This is what ours looks like right now when we used class equals table. But we've got some different variants. We've got table striping with table striped. We've also got table hover. So we want to add both of those, and then I'm going to change the default striping color. So we'll go back to our books index, and up here on our table, I'm going to add table striped and table hover. So this will give us alternating background colors as well as a rollover effect. But now I also might want to override this gray alternating color. I'll go back to my theme. We've got this light primary color. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to make this kind of beige. I want to use this beige instead as my alternating color. So I'll go back to my site. And I'm going to override in the table stripe definition for our table body. In our table row, in our alternating rows, which is nth of type 2n plus 1. So this will be every second row. So now I'm going to set the background color, paste in that hexadecimal value for our beige. So now we get the beige. I might even use that beige in the footer. We can think about it. Let's see if I go to the layout file. We'll just look at the footer for a minute. Could probably try it under, see if I override the footer class. So we'll try adding that background color. I'll add the beige to the footer. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so we've started to customize this. The one other thing I think I could do is just change the main text color. It's black. Maybe I'll try using as the body text. We'll just use this dark primary color, or this one, this primary text. Slightly, it's a very dark brown instead. So you can play around with this. So I'll just make the body color, paste in the dark brown. I'm not sure you even really noticed. Yeah, on my screen it is still a little more brown. One other tool I will mention, I'm not going to use right now, but you could use, is there's a logo maker here. So you can, it's free for non-commercial use. So you could go ahead and create a logo. You could set the colors. So we could make a last chapter logo if you wanted to. I'm going to skip that for now, but that tool is here. Also giving you a link to Pixabay, which is royalty-free photos. Lots of other places you can get photos for free, like Unsplash or Creative Commons, etc. So these are just some tools that are here that you can use to customize and kind of make the site your own. So the last thing I'm going to do with this is I want to create a Readme file and then publish this to Azure from GitHub, which you should do in your assignment. So I'll go to my Solution Explorer. I'm going to right click on the very top item. I don't want it inside the web folder. I want it in the root of the solution. I'm going to add a new item, which will be a text file, and I'll call it readme.md. And I'll just put in a description in HTML of what this site is. Site is built using .NET 5, fall 2021, Kid, Georgian, in Comp2084. Okay, I'm going to push my changes to Git. So this is lesson 5. Customize site. I come in and push to GitHub. I'll save my solution. And now because I've got my README file, when I click, the README shows up. Now I'm going to jump over to the Azure portal, set up a web application, and I'm going to deploy it directly from my Git repository. So I'm just going to click on Create a Resource. I'm going to create a web app. Use my Azure for Students subscription. And my Monday resource group, it already holds my database. So my web app name can be the last chapter. It's going to be a subdomain of AzureWebsites.net. I'm going to publish from code, and I'm going to choose .NET 5. On Windows, I will let it choose the region for me, and be sure we're picking the free SKU and size. So I'll just click Review and Create, and click Create, and this will take a minute or two to set up a web application. So let this run. It's going to first create the web app, and then we'll have the option through the Deployment Center to deploy our application directly from GitHub. So that means we don't need FTP, we don't need FileZilla or CyberDuck. We are going to, every time we push changes to GitHub, those changes will automatically sync to Azure. So it says our deployment succeeded. I can go to the resource. It says my website is running. I can stop it. So after I mark your assignment, you'll want to stop the server to preserve your Azure credits. Here's the URL. So if I click it, it'll open in a new tab. And I'm just going to get kind of a welcome screen here. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the Deployment Center over on the left. And I'm going to connect my web application I just created on Azure to GitHub. So I'm going to choose my source as GitHub. Now, here you'll be prompted to log into your GitHub account. I'm already signed in. See, your sign in can be saved. I'll have to choose it again. So now I can choose my repository. Here's the last chapter. I'm going to deploy from the master branch using .NET 5. So I will save that. And it's setting up a GitHub action build and deployment pipeline. So this is actually going to add a couple files to the Git repository. It's connected. We can always disconnect it if we want to change it. And now if I click on the logs, you can see it's building and deploying the site. This is going to take a few minutes to run. But this screen will update as things are done. So this will show us a deployment history, and at any point we could roll back to an earlier version if we want to. And it'll tell me when the GitHub synchronization is finished. But it'll take a few minutes to do. We can also keep an eye on our repository so we can see it started. It's added this GitHub workflows. So this is the code to do the synchronization to Azure. So I'll also have to pull my repository before I can do another push. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So far, my site won't have loaded yet, I don't think. Yep, we still are on our Azure splash screen. So close those. So it says our pipeline from GitHub was successful. And we could kind of see that it was from the update that Azure made to our repository. So it creates this deployment file. We're pushing from master with .NET 5. And this is this deployment script that runs. whenever we'll push changes to GitHub. And we'll try this in a minute. We just need to wait till it finishes. I'll just pause the recording for a few minutes. Okay, so another minute later, so we could see it takes about 3 minutes. It says our app is active and the deployment was successful. So now if I go and refresh, it's going to take a minute to load on the first request. And now my app is running in the cloud. Right? So all our data is still here because I'm using the Azure database. I could go and try something. So I want to add, let's say, I don't know, humor. So it's working. It's not super fast because we're on the free tier. So let's look now at what happens if I go to push a change. Let's say I want to update my homepage. I should give credit to Goodreads because that's where I've gotten the images from. So I'm going to go back to my home index. I'm going to put in a link here. Say this site is for educational purposes only. Images sourced from just fix my HTML a little bit. There. Okay, so now I've added some text to my homepage. I've given credit. So now I want to push this new change. So locally, right, I now have this, but on my live site on Azure, I don't have that change. So I'm going to go to Git Changes. I'll say update homepage. I'll commit and push. And it says it's unable to push because there's been an update in the remote branch. This is because Azure created that workflows file. So what I want to do is pull and then push. Normally I can just push. So I've pulled down that workflows file. Now it's pushed. And now we can see what happens. So we can see my change, lesson 5, part 2, I've updated the homepage. And now what's happening in the Azure portal? We don't see anything so far. But if I refresh, you'll notice it's now building a new building and a new deployment. So the old version is still active. If this breaks, I can just revert to this one. But again, it'll take a couple minutes. And then our change should be here. You can also hit sync manually, but the Azure portal is, the deployment center is set for continuous deployment. So it will always be looking for changes. So you only have to push changes to GitHub. You don't have to come back to Azure and sync manually every time. So we'll just let this run. It'll take a minute or two. And then the new version of the site should be available on Azure when this process completes. And it shows me the author, the commit author. If there's an error, I can also click here and it will show me. So I don't think it will have updated yet. Yep, so we're still getting the old home page. So I'm just going to wait till this process finishes. I didn't mean to close that. So still running. So you can see it's typically going to be 3 to 4 minutes before a new commit and push is synced to Azure. It's not immediate. Process is actually a little slower than it used to be. So once this completes, the new deployment will show as active, and the original one will no longer be active. It's just deploying now. We're almost there. Okay, so notice the original deployment is no longer active. The new version is now active. When I refresh it, it's going to be slow because it's got to rebuild, reload, and now we get the new homepage. Everything else is still here. But now my update's here. So to make updates, I can just commit and push to GitHub, but 3 or 4 minutes later, those changes are going to be visible in the Azure portal. So this is starting to look a little bit more like a production app. We've now deployed it to the cloud through source control, which you'll need to do in your assignment. So be sure you go through this lesson and make these customizations. You do not have to deploy the last chapter to the cloud, only your assignment. I wanted to go through the process. Have a good week, and I'll look forward to seeing your assignment ones the week after Thanksgiving.